Hello, welcome to another short video with Explore with Michael. I'm afraid I'm not doing very much exploring at the moment. My poor wife, God bless her, is quite ill, and we're spending our days visiting hospital or watching daytime TV. And my wife is absolutely hilarious, actually. She she when we're watching thrillers on TV, she's kind of booing the bad guy and cheering on the good guy and so forth. But we've got a real-time drama going on our TV at the moment, which is, of course, the war in the Holy Land, which should turn a saint to tears, you know. And consequently, there's a lot of odd stuff going on the interweb thingy. And one chap I find on the internet thingy quite amusing is a chap called Simon Webb. Very eccentric character, humongous moustache, bald head like myself, same age as myself. And he put out a video the other day telling English people not to worry if they fear that Islam is taking over, because, you know, Islam was dominant in various areas and they were kicked out and things, returned to the way they were. And it was very one-sided, racist, Islamophobic post. So I thought I'd put in my tuppence worth. So, interesting fact. When the Muslims took over Spain, they did it on invitation. The king at the time was King Roderick of Visigoth, Spain, in Toledo. And he was an usurper, really, and a lot of his ministers, they weren't with him. So he couldn't provide a unified front against the Muslims when they did attack. And one of the people he'd alienated was a chap called Julian of Ceuta, or Ceuta as the Spanish call it, and Ceuta as the Arabs call it. And Roderick had taken Julian's daughter into his care. She was a hostage, really. And the understanding was if he did anything out of order, his daughter would suffer. Common ploy, throughout history. Anyway, Roderick ravished his daughter, and Julian was incensed and told Tariq how to invade. And another group of people who aided the Muslim conquest of Spain were the Jews, because the Jews had suffered terrible anti-Semitism. So they aided the Muslims as well. And under the Muslims, they flourished, and great works of Jewish scholarship were undertaken, under Muslim rule. Now, history is never, black and white. And actually, an interesting thing was when Tariq had conquered virtually all of Spain, he was actually called back to Damascus, and he had to explain, what on earth did you do? What were you doing taking Spain when you didn't have any instructions from us? I think the Umayyads, they thought, what is this Berber doing, stealing the Arab thunder, Anyway, Tariq died in Syria, and the rest is history, as they say. But then the reconquistadors, they started almost kind of right away. And Spain was under a unified caliphate for a while, but then it broke into what are called taifas, rival Muslim states. And at the north, they had rival Christian kingdoms. And sometimes the Muslims would fight the Christians, sometimes the Christians would fight the Muslims, sometimes the Muslims would fight with the Christians against the Christians, and sometimes the Christians would fight with the Muslims against the Muslims. And it went on like this, and it was a dreadful state of affairs. And but when the Christians took Toledo, the Spanish Muslims panicked, and they asked a chap called Yusuf ibn Tashfin to come and help them against the Christian invasion. And Yusuf held them in check. And then when he arrived in Spain, he realized, God, these people are terribly, terribly corrupt. So he expelled, all the corrupt people and their Jewish viziers and so forth with them. But, another interesting thing that I find, Toledo was eventually taken. But the Christian kings, they didn't kick out the Muslim population or the Jewish population right away. They realized that the Muslims had the edge on them with learning and architecture and so on. And they actually commissioned the Muslims to translate from Arabic into Latin and Spanish the Greek philosophers and all of these classic texts. So, great scholarship was undertaken in Toledo by these Muslims who were under a kind of Catholic jizya tax. And one of the other things that Simon went on to talk about, he was talking about how the Hagia Sophia was a church and then became a mosque. And, he spoke about several churches like this. But in Toledo, there is a church, beautiful church, very, very old church. But that, in fact, had been a mosque before. And when you go in, they play beautiful Christian Gregorian chants. And then you'll hear beautiful Islamic music. And none of it's out of place. The altar, however, is raised, as it often is, but this was raised so that because Christianity couldn't be seen as being subservient to Islam. But, it just goes to prove in Spain, it wasn't black and white history, but people muddled along. Why can't we muddle along now? An interesting thing, actually, in Brick Lane, there's a synagogue. There is a mosque. But it's a very interesting mosque because before it was a mosque, it was actually a synagogue. And before it was a synagogue, it was either an Anglican or a Baptist church. And the mission of this church was to convert Jews to Christianity. They failed miserably. And then before that, it was a Huguenot chapel. And the Huguenots, they were French Protestants who were being persecuted by the Catholics, so they sought refuge here in England. Nigel Farage is actually a descendant from those refugees. But the Huguenots, actually, they had a beautiful sundial, and on the sundial it says something very, very telling. We are but shadows. Meditate on that, and we should really stop fighting each other. Okay, thank you for watching.